covering today is Reveal Math K to 5. We do have another session in an hour for Reveal Math 6 to 12, just making sure you're in 2 hours, you're in the right session. Thanks, DJ. I thought I'll be your moderator today, and my colleague might join us or not. And we're in the background to help you and support you. If you have any questions or you need any kind of support, please do let us know. If you face any technical difficulties, we're here to help you out. I have with me DJ West today, who's the National Director of Professional Learning. Thanks, DJ, for being here.
You are most welcome. And I told Sherish I need to change my picture because you're going to see a lot more gray hair in the camera.
I need to change mine as well, to be honest. I don't look that young now. But DJ is, I don't think I have to introduce you also. You've spent 25 years in education as well, with science and math, as a teacher, as a dean of students, principal, and a lot of our participants are familiar with your name and have seen you face to face as well. But thanks a lot for being here, DJ.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here this morning.
And although yes, and although Zoom is a platform where we're all very, very comfortable with, but I just want to remind you, because this question comes up quite a bit, that you will get the recording of this session. It will be coming to you through email. You will also get a certificate with the email address that you've registered from and attending. And you will have the opportunity for any Q&A towards the end of the session. So you're free to chat with us through the chat box as you're doing now. Use the Q&A box if you have any questions for us. Please feel free to do so. We want to keep this session as interactive as possible, so you can use both those options. They are located on the right-hand side of your screen. And I guess that's it for now. I'm in the background if you need any support, any help, but I can stop sharing at this point and let DJ continue. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we have a limited amount of time this morning. So the thing I want to focus on for back to school is you really getting started, understanding both the pedagogical structure and then how that relates to the digital program and where you would find things that we talk about this morning. So we're going to go back and forth between the two. I just want to, and during the session, probably 6 or 7 times, I'm going to ask you to jot something down. You can either do that on your device. If you have a piece of paper or pencil next to you and can do that, please do it. I want to thank you for spending the time and from joining us from so many different places. But I'm going to take you over first just to the digital, because I want to orientate you to a couple of resources that are available after we finish this morning. Then we'll come back and walk through the unit lesson structure. So when I come over to the digital, I simply call this page my book bag. I'm going to see all the grade levels. You as a teacher would typically have the grade level you teach. I'm going to go into grade 3 right now, but this would be exactly the same for any grade level that I go into. I'm going to shrink this a little bit so that my screen shows up more. I do want you to know with the digital, it works with any of your normal browser tools. So my Control+, Control-. The other thing I'm going to do just for a moment is I'm going to hit, I'm on a PC, I'm going to hit my F11 key, which removes my URL bar up at the top. Now, the thing I want you to jot down right now, I'm going to give you 2 in just a minute, but the first one is the digital resources are organized on 3 levels: program, unit, lesson. And here's why that's so important for you: program, unit, lesson. Because if I'm looking, like somebody asked earlier, where do I find the unit diagnostic? You're going to find that at the unit level. So when I open up this piece right here that says browse your course, you're going to see several blades here right at the top that say program. These are program resources. So they span the whole course. Then you're going to notice my units. So if I'm in unit 4 and I'm looking for the diagnostic, one of the places I can find it is at this unit level. And then when you open the unit up, you're going to see all of your lessons. So if you're looking for anything for that lesson, it's going to be in that lesson blade. And we'll take a little bit more detailed look at that in a minute. But the reason I wanted to come here first, this is the second thing I'm going to ask you to jot down. We're going to do a quick overview today but we built in a lot of professional learning resources for Reveal Math K-5. When I click open this one that says Learning and Support Resources, let me go ahead and bring that blade open. And I'm going to collapse all these. And I scroll down. I just want you to know all the support pieces built in here. And that's what this all is. All of this is professional learning resources. So up at the top, getting started with Reveal Math. And if I click this open, you're going to see a digital walkthrough right here. And then one I don't want you to miss is this quick start course right here. Please jot that down. There's a quick start course that goes back over a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, pedagogically and with the digital. So you've got this section called Getting Started, but I'd also like you to, I know we have at least one vice principal or administrator on the call. There's some admin support in here, like guidelines for you, informal walkthrough checklist, a formal observation checklist that's built in here. And then I'm going to talk about some different parts of the program. We're going to look at the Math Is unit. We're going to look at the Be Curious moment. And these are all short little videos that are done by our different authors about these parts of the program and how to do them effectively in the classroom. So please take a look at all of this. If you do PLCs or you have grade level meeting groups, these are great resources to use in those to further your understanding of Reveal Math. So please, at the beginning level, under Program Overview, Learning and Support Resources, that Quick Start course, the digital overview, your admin support, and then support for every part of the lesson structure that's built in. Now, we're going to come back more to the digital, but just remember the first two things. Number one, the materials are organized on 3 levels: program, unit, lesson. And then secondly, when you go in on that program level, you have learning and support resources. That's where you're going to find that quick start, the admin course, the digital overview, and then professional learning on all of those resources. So let's click back over to the program and jump in really quick. You'll notice, there are a number of components that go along with the program from a teacher and student perspective. So there is a 2-volume student consumable and also your 2-volume teacher edition. The teacher edition is pedagogically oriented about how to teach the lesson and how to introduce the unit. All of these resources, though, the important thing, are digital that go along with that kit, both for the teacher and the student. And please take a look at my screen just for a minute. For the student, you're going to notice, especially for our K-5 students, you're going to notice it's much simpler than the teacher dashboard we were looking at. Really, if I was in K-1-2 and I'm using the digital with my students, I would want them to do the to-do list. That's where I would put whatever I expect them to use, and we'll show how to do that today. But all of it's digital, and it will work on any device that you want to use it on. That blended aspect is important. So I would tell you this, please use the digital. And I'm going to show you why I say that, but one of the reasons is we built in so many mathematical modeling tools that you can use with your students, whole group, small group, or individually, that will enrich their mathematical discussion. Okay. Now, and understanding really is what it will do. A couple other things to note is that there is a free app. I would say this is more for my 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, and then on up above. It is called the Read Anywhere app, a free download from the App Store or from Google Play. And just know that your students can use this with their login if they have one in order to access their grade level material. And then one other thing that may be helpful for many of you is it does work with Google Classroom. Right now, you can share any assignment or assessment with your Google Classroom. And it also, if this is helpful for some of your student, it also works with Google Translate. So if you use the Google Translate extension for Arabic or another language, please know that it works with those when you open anything in a new tab. Okay, so we'll take a look at some of those materials. So Reveal Math is a balanced program. Here's what we mean by that. It is going to be a mix of inquiry on the student's part and guided instruction on your part as a teacher. You're actually going to have some choices as we take a look at that. And we're looking at an emphasis on student discourse and students' ideas. And here's why that's so important. If students are talking with each other about the math and they're using the mathematical language, that's going to be huge in developing true understanding of the math and not just memorization. And that means then they can use the mathematical concepts in other contexts than just in solving a specific kind of problem. So you're going to see that balance of that math, both in inquiry and guided instruction. So let's jump into the program and actually think about you starting the year and how this is laid out for you to use. So one thing we wanted to do in the program is actually deal with this whole idea of math phobia, I call it, a little bit of anxiety students have when they come into the math classroom. In fact, maybe some of you at the elementary level can think, I have a little bit of that math anxiety when I go into a classroom. So we want to make sure that we start the year and we start the class out right. So we do that in a couple ways. Number one, in Unit 1, you're actually going to find a math attitude survey. They can do this paper pencil. It's simply a printable they use. You could do a whole group with them and have a discussion. And really what it's about is looking at how your students feel about math. And why that's so important is if you don't know their perception of mathematics, you don't know how to support them accurately. So we want to make sure you have the ability to do that. So I'm just going to suggest you use this. We put it in there. It only takes a few minutes to do. Notice question number 8. When I get a wrong answer for a problem, how do I feel? Because you know what, we've always got it to the point where right is good, wrong is bad. And so I feel bad when I get it wrong. You know what? Wrong is part of the learning experience. And what we want to make sure is we don't keep getting the same thing wrong. Notice number 9 down there. When I don't know what to do to solve a problem, what do I do? You're going to have some students say, I quit. You're going to have some students say, I ask somebody. Really what we're looking at is their backgrounds so you know how to deal with those students when you walk into class. The second thing that we start the year out with, and by the way, this is unique to Reveal Math, at every grade level K-5, we're going to start out with the Math Is unit. The Math Is unit does a couple of things, but primarily it was created to set context and to start the year off positively. There will be 6 lessons. The first lesson is called Math is Mine. Now, when they go in this, what do we mean math is mine? We really want the students looking at what do I think about math? And also in this first lesson, you as a teacher get to tell your math story. You get to talk about, in fact, in grade 3 here, when we're looking at it, the students and you as a teacher actually get to talk about your math superpower. What do you really do well in math? And the idea is to help students develop the capacity to have discussion and have more than 1 or 2 students answer questions in class. So they're going to start out, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Well, all these kids are dressed in superhero costumes. Why? Because you know what? We all have a math superpower and they get to go in that. So you're going to see the ability for them to work through this. They're also going to review some of the concepts from the previous grade level as they go through the Math Is unit. In lessons 2 to 5, we do an overview of that math is a way of thinking. And really what we're looking at the mathematical practices and processes about how we do math. So it's more than just solving a problem. There are strategies that we use. There are efforts that we do. There are ways that we communicate about math and how do we talk about it with each other. So it's setting the context. And then in lesson 6, you're going to see we wrap it up with Math is Ours. And really, what is our math classroom going to look like? So if you think about really what we're doing here, we're setting context for the whole year about Number one, how we think about math. Number two, how we do math and discuss it. And number three, what math looks like in our classroom. I went to a sporting event not too long ago, and there were it was a baseball game in Colorado. And, there were 18 players that were actively playing the game. And there were 40,000 people in the stands watching. It's like if you go to a football game or a soccer game and you see so many people, so few players playing and a lot of people watching. We do not want the math classroom to be a non-participant sport. We want them not to be spectators. We want them actively involved. That's going to start the year out. It is the first unit in every grade level. I'm going to strongly suggest you do that. In a minute, we're going to walk through a lesson. Just know that these lessons are laid out like every other lesson in the program. So that's the Math Is unit. And in fact, at the end of the unit, we actually set up our classroom norms. What should our classroom be like? And they get to participate in this, in about the way that we do math. Okay. Then we go into the second unit or any of the units following. And we still have an emphasis at the unit level of students being able to have that positive classroom environment. So you're going to see that we start off with a number of things. Now, somebody already asked about this next one I'm going to pull up. Every unit starts off with a unit diagnostic. Please jot this down. Every unit starts with a unit diagnostic focused on the prerequisite skills. Now, what that means then, I'm not seeing if they can do the math in this unit. I'm seeing if they can do prior grade level or prior in the year skills that are needed in this unit. Now, what you're noticing on the screen, this is available as a printable. It's also available as a digital. Students could take it either way. They could take it paper pencil. If you have student subscriptions, they can take it as a digital resource. Either way that you do it, the most important aspect of this is that we have built into Reveal Math specific guided support intervention lessons around those prerequisite skills. Now, what I mean by that, you're noticing on the right-hand side, this comes right out of the teacher edition, whether you're in the print version or the digital version. It's going to identify each item on this diagnostic. So you'll notice 1 through 10. It's going to give you the DOK level. It will give you the skill. Now, I'm in a 3rd grade assessment. Notice where the standards come from. They're all 2nd grade standards. But the most important thing is right here where it says, oh, there's a guided support intervention lesson. Now, we're going to look at where to find these in just a minute. But I want you to know, and let me back up just one piece right here. I want you to know, even though there are 10 questions, there are not 10 different guided intervention lessons. Some of these questions, look at the same idea. And so you'll notice that there will be a limited number of these that we're identifying. But the thing I'm asking you to do to jot down, there's a diagnostic, and with that, there are guided intervention lessons already built in the program to use in a small group or individual format. I'm going to show you just a second where to find the diagnostic. So just hold on to that thought for a minute. We'll come back and take a look at that, okay? The second thing we do is, I was a math teacher for a long time. The question I always hated as a math teacher is, why do I have to learn this, or when am I going to use this? Now, I'm going to stop sharing just for a second and reshare. I want to make sure I'm sharing with my audio. Yep, I am. Good deal. We start every unit out with a STEM focus. We use one of our STEM career kids. They come from all kinds of backgrounds. This unit on fractions in 3rd grade is going to be introduced by Haley. One day, Haley wants to be an astronomer, and we're trying to remove that question, when am I ever going to use this? because what we do is we build in 2 short videos at the unit level. Okay, one of these is a career video, the other ties directly to the math. So let me play just a short piece of this. There we go.
Oh, hey, I'm Haley. It's a great night for stargazing. Stars may be many millions of miles away. If you measure how bright a star is, the data can help you determine how far away it is. Someday, I hope to discover new stars. The sky's the limit when you're an astronomer. I'm checking out the moon. You can see about 1/2 of it right now. Last week, the moon was a crescent. And oh, hey, I'm Haley. It's a great...
So you're going to notice in the first video, she just introduced what an astronomer does. In the second one, we're bringing up a specific aspect of fractions that we're getting to go into. But really, it just shows the students that the math has real life application. And then we're not just going to introduce the unit with Haley. You're going to see throughout that unit, Haley will come back into play. You're going to see it in some of the problems throughout the lessons, not every lesson, but notice here, this is coming out of one of the lessons in that unit where she's tracking a space track with fractions. You're going to see in some of the differentiation, like the STEM adventure. And then often there's a performance task. There's always a performance task in the unit, but often that performance task ties back to Haley's work. And really, we're doing that positive environment, showing them that math has a place in the real world. You're going to see a whole variety of these students doing different things, wanting different careers that all tie to STEM, but there will be one per unit. And then 2 last things we do at the unit level. The next one we do is we have an activity that starts every unit called an Ignite activity. These are written by Dr. Raj Shah. Dr. Shah is the co-founder of the Global Math Project, has a experimental school where they actually work on a lot of the positive environment around mathematics. But you're going to notice in this one, this is a situation where, again, in the unit on fractions, where students are looking at different ways that muffins could be divided among different students. In print, in their student book, but also digital, it really is about mathematical discourse. So typically the way I would use these, like if you look at day 1, you have 6 muffins equally shared among 3 students. I would have the student do it individually. I would have them turn to a shoulder partner. Then we would discuss a whole group. I'd go to day 2, 3 muffins by 2 students. Okay, so I want you to think about this. And then when I got done, I'd have a little fun and ask them if they could only get muffins one day, which day would they want to do it? Because it makes them think about the quantities that are available for that. That's the Ignite activity. Please do these at the beginning of the unit. It just spurs curiosity. And then also, you can refer back to this as you get into the lessons and think back to our muffins. What of this that we learned today would we have used to help us in dividing those muffins up? So those are all things that start this out. And it's also said in a way that presents. Now, I'm going to stop there just for a second and go back to the digital for a minute. So think about it. At the beginning of the unit, I mentioned 3 specific things. There's a unit diagnostic that focuses on prerequisite skills along with those guided intervention lessons. Secondly, there's our STEM Career Kit introduction that's going to follow through the unit. Number 3 was the Ignite activity. So where do I find these resources digitally as a teacher? I'm going to click back over to my digital. Again, I'm in this as a teacher. We said that the materials were structured on 3 levels: program, unit, lesson. So if you think about that, I'm looking for the unit resources that go with that unit. So I'm going to click open my browse. Notice what we talked about. The very first unit is that Math Is unit, 6 lessons, all focused on starting the year off right. But I'm going to go to the one that we were looking at. I'm just going to click into Unit 7, and I'm going to click on the unit title. And you'll notice at the top of this page, Reveal Math, Grade 3, Course, and then Resources, and underneath that, it says Unit 7, Fractions. So I'm going to expand all these and collapse them. So if I scroll down, all of those things that we talked about, my readiness diagnostic, my targeted intervention that goes along with that, my STEM videos, and my Ignite activity are all right there. Now, I'm going to click these open for a minute. So under my resources, I'm going to see my student edition for this lesson, both the digital or interactive version, we call it, and a version that looks just like the print book. Okay. I'm going to see my teacher edition right here for this lesson. And if I click this open just for a minute, what I want you to realize, this is going to look just like your TE that you have open in print. Let me move my image for a minute. One thing when you're in it, everything as a teacher opens up in a kind of a truncated window. You can go full screen with this, and you have a little toggle button right here to go single page, which will enlarge it, make it a little bit easier to read for that day. But this is your whole teacher edition. I'm just going to click through for a minute. You're going to see all your background as a teacher, my focus, coherence, and rigor. You're going to see my strategies and my routines, like my language development routines, my math, language and math routines, my number routines. But then here's that readiness diagnostic we just talked about a minute ago. And right next to it is that guided intervention piece. So I want you to just know that that TE is the same. Now, a little bit of background on teaching fractions, just some real nice support materials that's built in here. When I get down to my readiness diagnostic, here's my digital version. Always notice by the graph, here is my printable version. You can use either one and do the same thing. And when I open my intervention lessons up for every one of those topics, you're going to see your guided support. Identify and name quadrilaterals is built in here. When I scroll down, I'm going to have one on rows and columns, okay? Equal shares of the same whole. Those are some of the topics that we were addressing in that. My STEM videos, if I pull those down, I've got my career one, and I've got my math in action one where I'm talking about fractions. And then for my Ignite activity, I'm going to see my student printable. My teacher materials is directly in my teacher edition. Those are all things that we use to start the unit in order to draw the students into the topic that we're getting ready to discuss. And where do we find that? If I click back to my dashboard for a minute, when I clicked it open, we had my program materials, and then I just went to the unit level to find all of those resources, including the diagnostic. That's one place you can find the assessment. Okay. Let's jump over then to a lesson. Now, let me just take a look right here. Okay. Are there, by the way, these were a great couple of things. You know what? Those strategies do work with kindergarten students. You're going to find that. The daily lesson plan is in the book, but you'll find those planning resources online as well. It's always going to be digital and print. And then there was a question which I should go back to here. So let me do a couple of things real quick. I'm going to click onto the course. And when you look at this, there's not a PowerPoint for the lesson because we wanted to include the interactive resources. You're going to notice when you scroll down, every piece of the lesson. So for instance, I'm going to scroll down to the STEM career. Every one of these resources will have a little button that says add to presentation or remove from presentation. So with my videos, if I scroll down a little bit more with my Ignite activity, I want that in my presentation, I can determine the pieces I want in there. And then at the unit level and at the lesson level, you will always have this launch presentation button. So if I launch that, whatever the first resource I have in here is, will be the resource that comes up. So I'm going to click back here to fractions. Oh, this is my interactive student book. I can go to my next resource, which is my focus question. I can go to my vocabulary. I can look, I put a guided support lesson in here, but it's whatever I determine. Here's my video, whatever I determine put in here is what's going to be in it. So I can edit that presentation as well as use it, but that goes along with every lesson and every unit. Now let me click back over and walk you through a lesson. So you've opened the unit up. We're now going to look at this flexible lesson, okay? You'll see what I mean by flexible. This is the layout for any lesson. If you're in the teacher edition, either at the unit level or at the lesson level, we will have detailed pacing for you. It's always going to start with a launch. We're going to go into exploring and developing the math. That's the heart of the exploration, or really where we're doing the math content. We're going to practice and reflect. Every lesson is going to have an assess piece. That's the exit ticket. And then every lesson is going to have some differentiation options. So this structure will be for every single lesson, including the math is unit lessons. So it's always going to run this way. It's important to note that we differentiate at the lesson level because we want to make sure if they're missing a concept, we don't wait till the end of the unit to differentiate, because then it's too late. So we're going to build that differentiation in. Now, when you go into your teacher edition, this is what I mean. You're going to see your learning targets. You're going to see the standards and the mathematical practices we're focusing on in this lesson. You're going to see your focus. We have a content objective, a math language objective, and a social emotional learning objective that goes along with the lesson. You're going to see your coherence. At the unit level, when you see this, it will look at the coherence across grades. At the lesson level, it's going to look at this particular topic. Sometimes last time we did it was previous grades, and then the next time we're going to use this one is in grade 4. But it gives you the idea of the flow. And I do want to point this one out as far as rigor goes. You're going to see in the TE that the 3 parts of rigor are always in a lesson: conceptual understanding, fluency, and application. They are not equal in every lesson, though, because the focus of the lesson will be on the focus of the standard. So in this case, the focus of the standard is conceptual understanding. So you'll notice in rigor here, it says under procedural skill and fluency, it is not a specific thing here, element of rigor for this standard. So all it means is it's not going to be the focus of this lesson. So please use that teacher edition. In the TE, you're going to see a number routine. I'm going to ask you to jot this one down. The number routine is not in the student book and can be done anytime during the day. It does not have to start the lesson. It's all about building fluency. And so you're going to see an opportunity. Now, the reason it's not in the student book, we expected this to be a whole group activity. Okay, you do it, turn to your shoulder partner, let's all discuss this. It's all about prerequisite ideas. They're written by Dr. John Sangiovanni. This is where his research is all about, his number routines. This is an example of a quick number routine. It could be used as a bell ringer before the lesson. It could be used as an activity we do coming back from lunch or from a recess break in class to bring the students, back to focus. Here it's showing digitally on the screen. This is a would you rather. There are all different kinds of these. Would you rather have the number of snacks in A or in B? Think about it for a minute. If you don't mind throwing in the chat, would you rather have the number of snacks in A or in B? I'm going to wait for you just a minute. Number of snacks in A or B? Just throw it in the chat for me. Oh, good. I got some answers coming in. A. Oh, I got a definitely B. Okay. And a B. And you know what? It all depends on us, because if I want more snacks, I want the number in A. If I want fewer snacks because I don't want the calories, I'm going to want the ones in number B. And when you project this on the screen, you're going to see next step. All it does in next step is it brings up the next problem. Would you rather have 40 or would you rather have 5 times 7? Would you rather have 6 times 6 or 6 times 8? And so we're just having the students review topics they're already familiar with. Okay. This is not the only review we do. but it's just a quick bell ringer piece. So that number routine sometime we'll look on decomposition. There are a number of different strategies built into this. Remember about the number routine. Number one, you have it for every day. Number two, you do not have to use it at the beginning of the lesson, okay? We put it as part of the launch because it's mentioned in the TE. And the other thing I have to remember, it's not in the student book. The real launch to the lesson is this right here. In the student book, whether print or digital, you will have the Be Curious moment. These are written by Annie Fetter. They're print in the book. They're digital for you to project on screen. These are always moments for every student to participate in that lesson. And so what you're going to notice here, this one is a Be Curious. It goes along with this 7-1 on fractions. The lessons are partitioning shapes into equal parts. Their Be Curious moment is how are they the same? How are they different? This starts every lesson, takes about 5 minutes, but it comes up on the screen. Again, it's a moment for every student to have access into that lesson. And I'm just going to tell you how important this is. When I taught math and I would ask a question, I would have 2 or 3 students raise their hand. And typically, it was the same 2 or 3 students because students were a little bit afraid of getting the wrong answer. Many times in the Be Curious moment, there's not one specific right or wrong answer. I mean, students could look at these. How are they the same? How are they different? Well, how are they the same? Well, they're all round, but every student can have a voice. And that's so important for mathematical understanding, for students to feel like they can participate. Because if they can participate here, they can participate later in the lesson. So how are they the same? How are they different? You're going to see notice and wonder. You're going to see which one doesn't belong. You're going to see what questions could I ask? And then the other part we do on the opening is we always do a math is mindset moment. So how can you show that you value the different ways others solve problems? And really it's about how do we interact with others in math class? At the end of the lesson, we're going to reflect on this. Okay. So the true launch of the lesson is the Be Curious moment. You're going to see it in the TE, you're going to see it in the student book, you're going to see the pedagogy around it. If I really wanted to look at different ways to use this, then I'm going to flip back over to the digital for a minute. Okay. And I'm going to go back to, I'm going to click this open and go all the way back to on my program overview, learning and support resources. If I scroll down in all of this professional development, you're going to see my Be Curious moments and how to use that. So there's a series of videos in here that talk about why this was developed. So here's an overview. How do I use notice and wonder? How do I use numberless word problems? Which one doesn't belong? Is that always true? Teaching tips for using these. So these are all built in to support your use of those materials. And then while I'm here, you're going to notice that math is unit we talked about, using the number routines right here or the Ignite activities. This is all support for you to use those materials. Now let me flip back over to our lesson. We're going to go from our notice and wonder, that's launching the lesson, into the second part of the lesson, which is explore and develop. Every lesson is going to pose a problem after that Be Curious moment. So we started out, how are they the same? How are they different with these equal shapes? Then we're going to move into our problem. Arun is designing a flag in the shape of a rectangle. He wants to partition that flag into equal parts and have a different color for each part. How can he do that? How can he partition a flag into equal parts? So the students get to start discussing that. Then here is the most unique part, and this is something you need to jot down. In every lesson, after you pose the problem, you're going to have a choice about how you develop that math. And here's what I mean by that. In your teacher's edition, you're going to see explore and develop. You're going to see pose the problem. And then it's going to say develop the math. And you are going to have the choice between an activity-based exploration or a guided exploration. The activity-based, a lot of times students are using hands-on manipulatives. They're exploring it physically as they work through that. The guided exploration is more teacher-led. Now, if you think about that, then when I develop it, I can use either way. I can use that activity-based exploration, or I can use the guided exploration where I, as a teacher, lead them through this. Now, please, under the jotting down part you're doing, I want you to know a couple things. Number one, this is not that I choose one way all year and then only do that way. Every classroom using Reveal Math should at times be using the activity-based exploration and at times being using the guided exploration. So it's not one or the other. Number two, how do I determine? So some of this is based on a number of factors. Number one, how did my class do on the readiness diagnostic? So if they're missing some of the prerequisite skills, I need to deal with that through those guided intervention lessons, but also then I might support them more with the guided example right here, because I want to make sure they have the foundational piece. Second way I determine it based on my class. I mean, if I have a class that learns better, if they're actively involved, I want to make sure they're doing that activity-based. And then number three, one doesn't mean I can't use the other. So if I start out with the guided exploration and I notice they're struggling a little bit with the idea, maybe I switch over and we do the activity-based. Or vice versa, we're doing the activity-based and I see they're not getting more of the formalized structure of the math, maybe I switch over to the guided. So I've got a built-in second way to teach the lesson. Now I'm going to go back to the digital just for a minute because I want to highlight something, because that's the biggest question I get about this. Which one do I use? So you're going to see two things that will help you. If I go back to the digital, you're going to see in those learning and support resources at the program level, there's a whole blade right here about guided and activity-based exploration. So why did we put two different instructions in? What are the similarity and differences between these? What are the role of the teacher and student? When I do it, let's walk through a lesson with the guided exploration and some teaching tips. And then you actually have some real classroom videos we did with the guided for first grade and fourth grade. You're also going to see that same thing for the activity-based exploration. So you'll have resources in here that help you look at using both of these different methods in the classroom. And then one other piece I want to show you, I'm going to click here, remember program unit lesson. We're going to go down to Unit 7, Lesson 1. That's the lesson we're in right now. When we look at the structure of the digital, you're going to see my lesson resources. If I open that up, there's my student edition, my teacher edition, anything downloadable, like I have a piece that I use here on partitioning shapes, it's going to be in there. And let me scroll down just a little bit. If I look at my explore and develop right here, because that's the part of the lesson we're in, right here, how do I choose when I'm looking at partitioning shapes into equal parts? How do I choose between the activity-based and the guided exploration? So it's going to help you right here determine which is the best one for your classroom. But that's how you get in and explore and develop the math. You're going to look at that. Now, if you determine to go to the guided route for this particular lesson in explore and develop, you're going to see you have a piece here, part presentation, that walks you through that part of the lesson. Now, I'm going to click this open if you don't mind. And here's what we mean by guided exploration. So I'm going to, oh, this is all the way back at the last page because it remembers where you were last time you were in this. So we're going to start out by posing the problem. Notice it's the same thing that we have in the book. Arun is designing a flag in the shape. He wants to partition into equal parts. How can he do that? And then what I'm going to do is we're going to work through this step by step. Let's look at how we can partition or divide a rectangle into 4 equal parts. Let's show some different ways that we could do that. In your book right now, I want you to take that rectangle. What are 3 or 4 different ways that you could break that into 4 parts? And I would actually have the students, but you know what? I can take my drawing tool and I can actually, do that into 4 different parts. This is right out of the student interactive book. The students could do the same thing. So step by step, we're going to work through this topic of equal parts, partitioning things into equal parts. We're not just going to stay in 4. We're going to work step by step and take a look at this. This is what we're going to do into 6. We can do this in 6. But you can see we're working through the concept. It's a great way to, after the activity base, to come back and say, okay, let's take a look at that, then a little bit more formal in the math. Okay, so we have that guided exploration. Either way, the teacher edition is going to have background information for you. And one piece I want to call out here, wherever you see in the teacher edition these blue notes, really what they go back to the effective teaching practices. This one on supporting productive struggle. What are some of the questions I can ask without telling a student how to do it? Okay, what are the things that will prompt discussion and encourage students to move forward? So this one is supporting productive struggle, getting them to think about what they're doing. Over on the right-hand side, facilitating meaningful discourse, okay? Thinking about that piece. But we're going to build that in because those questions are so important. And then you'll see the activity debrief right underneath that. You're going to see 2 parts about math language built in. You'll see these MLRs, those are called the math language routines. They are routines that are built in to help students actually use the language of math and then also build understanding. They were developed out of Stanford University, specific around English language learners. But then, every student in math is a math language learner. They're good for all students. You're going to see them called out both at the unit level and at the lesson level. And then the language of math is being able to use pieces to actually build out their vocabulary, because we want students using the math language when they do it. And you'll see scaffolds built in for your English language learners. You'll often see these on the page of the teacher edition where we look at the guided exploration and the activity-based exploration. Regardless of which route I take, activity-based or guided, we're going to wrap that explore and develop up with bring it together. Okay. That bring it together is meant to be a collaborative exercise now for the students to apply what we've done in that lesson. And then we're going to practice and reflect. Just so you know, the practice is in the student book. The practice is in the interactive book. If there is not enough practice in the student book, there is extra practice for this lesson that can be printed or can be done digitally. But that practice and reflect is you're going to see a variety of types of questions. And here's another one to jot down. Every lesson has a math replay video that re-highlights what students did in that lesson. I'm going to play just a short bit of this one.
Partition shapes into equal parts. Today, you will learn how to partition a shape into equal parts. Arun is designing a flag in the shape of a rectangle.
These are 1.5 to 2 minutes long. They go back over that lesson just like we did it in the lesson. It's a review piece for a student that wasn't there. They were there and they were still struggling. They are a great piece for parents that want to help their students, because it's going to walk the parent through that lesson. They can then go back and help the student. That's called the math replay video. It's available for every single lesson. And then one of the things I wanted to point about the practice, you're going to see some DOK level 1, DOK level 2, and DOK level 3. You'll see questions like this error analysis. You'll also see our STEM career kid pop back up. You'll see extending your thinking. And then at the end, we're going to reflect on that essential question we started with. And we're also going to reflect on the math is mindset. That's going to be in the reflect and practice. Now, with this, you will always know the DOK level of the problems. We're going to spell that out in the teacher edition for you. And you're going to notice the rigor focus of every problem. So in this one, questions 1 through 6 were all DOK level 1, and it was all about fluency. Questions 7 and 8 were about, do they really understand the concept? 9 to 11, again, are fluency oriented, and number 12 is application. If the lesson were more application oriented with the standard, you would see more application questions, and then you have the exit practice. Now let's talk about assessment and differentiation, and really quick in the last few minutes that we have. That actually took us through the first 3 parts of that lesson. We launched it with the Be Curious moment. We explored and developed the math either through the activity-based or the guided exploration. Then we had the reflect and practice with the lesson practice and the extra practice. At the end of that lesson, there's going to be an exit ticket. Print or digital, you can use it either way. Print it out. It's really about seeing very quickly. Notice here 3 questions, same questions whether they're print or digital. All right. When I get in that, I'm going to immediately know whether students understand this or not. What if they understand it? What if they don't understand it? So in the teacher edition, you're going to see this little exit ticket recommendation. If students score 3 out of 3, then think about giving them a B or an E activity. 2 out of 3, think about a B activity or take another look. And 1 or fewer, think about small group intervention or one of the R activities. What do I mean by an R, B, E, and R? Well, it's going to give you this little code. R is reinforcing understanding, B is building proficiency, and 3 is extending thinking. Students aren't categorized by this. Their understanding of specific lesson is characterized by this. Because one lesson they may understand really well. So in the teacher edition, right after the exit ticket, you're going to see this page. Notice the headings on this. R, B, and E, reinforce understanding, building proficiency, and extending thinking. For every single lesson, you have a differentiation opportunity. You see workstation, online, or independent. You're going to have the option for all of these. These will all be at the lesson level that they go with, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. Okay. When you see these take another look, they are 15-minute mini lessons on reteaching that particular lesson. Really, really valuable. They, unlike the math replay, they go about it in a different way. It's a different approach to that same idea of partitioning into equal shapes. Okay?
Raul, James, and Elise are ready to get food at the party. Raul wants to have some of this sandwich. The sandwich is cut into 2 equal pieces. Raul wants half of the sandwich.
Now, when they do that, then it goes into the learn and apply, where students are now going to play with the idea and can immediately check their answers. You know, if a lot of students struggled, you could come up and use this small group with them. But if you have 1 or 2 students struggle, this is actually assignable to them that they could go in and do this. And it ends with a quick little check for you to be able to see how students progress. Now, the game stations, you're going to see these at every level. These are written by Dr. Nikki Newton. They make great small group pieces, and they're building fluency on that idea. So they're reinforcing what we just did in the lesson. It's not about, it's supporting that current idea. You're going to see we have some games, digital games built into the program that you could use. Every lesson has that spiral review, either printable or digital, that you can use with the students. And then for extending the thinking for students that have the idea, we have some extension activities. There's an application statement. Some of these are STEM oriented. Some are coding, in fact, that are built into the program. You have the web sketch exploration. And then all of these actually have a print or an end piece for reinforcing building proficiency or extending learning. This is at the end of every single lesson. And then we would go into assessment. So we started the unit opening out. We went through the complete lesson. Let's come back and assess. At the end of the unit, you're going to have the unit review and the performance task all in the book. Okay, digital. That performance task, you're going to have a rubric that goes along with it. You're going to have a number of fluency supports built in at the end of the unit, identifying for you exactly what we're working on. Then you're going to have also some of the games that we built in and things in the program, the number routine, the digital games, the spiral review that are about fluency. And then notice the variety of assessments that come along with the course. There's a course diagnostic. There's 3 benchmarks. There is that Are You Ready, which is the diagnostic. We've got the exit ticket for the lesson. Each unit has a performance task and 2 versions of the summative assessment. Now I'm going to flip over to the digital just for a minute. We're going to wrap up in the last 3 minutes. Okay. Then I'll stay and take some of the questions that are here, but I'm going to come back over and let's think back to that lesson. So there's my explore and develop. When I click into my reflect and practice, here's the practice in the book. Here's the math replay video, okay, right here. I can put that in my presentation. I can use it with my students. I can assign it. I can put it on the calendar. Right underneath it is the digital version of the exit ticket and the printable version. And then as I scroll down just a little bit, here's all those differentiation resources, okay? Reinforce understanding, build proficiency, extend my thinking. All of those pieces are built in right here for you to be able to use, including the extra practice that we've created for the material, okay? So everything for the lesson is built in here. When you start looking then for the end of unit materials, where am I going to find those? Well, if I click right here and I scroll down after the lessons, I have my fluency practice and then my unit review and assessment. So here's my unit resources again. Here's my unit review. If I click on my unit assessment, I'm going to see the performance task, the Form A and the Form B. And then one thing I want you to know about the unit assessment, just like with the Are You Ready? I'm going to skip ahead a minute, okay? Just because of my time, guys, okay? If they take that unit assessment, there's going to be that same type of guided intervention support lesson, but on the current grade level standard. And that was found in the digital right here at the unit level. I've got my assessment, but then under that, here's my targeted intervention for these on grade level assessments: equal parts of a whole, understanding unit fractions, interval on a number line, unit fractions on a number line, so on. All built in for me to support the students that are struggling with those ideas. Two last things, I'm going to wrap it up. So what questions you have? When you're in here, you know, and I'm going to go back to my lesson just for a minute. Remember, program unit lesson. I'm going to go back into the lesson. We talked about the presentation, but next to the presentation button, you also have a little edit button. If I click right here, you're going to see then under edit, everything in this lesson. So anything that's shaded out is not actively in the presentation. If I wanted it in there, I simply click the button and I put it in. Now, I don't want the interactive student edition because I'm using the number routine. I've got my Be Curious moment. I've got my guided exploration. I've got my On My Own, and then I've got my math replay. Well, you know what? I'm actually going to take the math replay and put it right after the guided exploration before we go into On My Own. So you notice you can move it around. You can determine, you can change right in a second what's on here. And then something you should jot down about the presentation. Not only is it editable, but students have it on their page. So you have that presentation that you can use. But then secondly, if you assign anything here or you add it to the calendar, it will show up on the student page. Now notice my dashboard. I'm going to click over here. I have 3 assignments right here. I'm going to show you what that looks like from a student side. So if I go to my roster, I'm going to emulate one of my students. And this is what their page looks like. I want you to notice just a much simpler look, okay? So I normally would not have this many things on my calendar, but you're going to notice they have a number. All they do is click Let's Go for whatever you want them to get into right from this page. So really, really supportive in doing that. But at that unit opening, we're pulling them in. We have the readiness diagnostic with the guided intervention. We have the Ignite activity. We have the STEM career focus to get the kids engaged in the topic. Please use those. We get into the lesson. We start with the launch, which is the be curious moment. We explore and develop the math either through the activity-based or the guided exploration. We then bring it all together. We reflect and practice. We use that exit ticket and then determine what differentiation is involved. And then we have the resources to wrap up that unit. Okay, I'm going to exit here. If you want to get and play around or change any of the assessments, excuse me, oh, I closed it out. You can do that from the assessment tab. Oh, no, I didn't. Here it is. Okay, you can do that from the assessment tab. And when you go into the assessments, you're going to see your course-wide assessments, your benchmarks, your diagnostic for the course. You're going to see your assessments for each unit, and you will see the practice for each unit. That's for the extra practice and spyware review for every single lesson. So guys, this is the quick overview. Biggest thing to remember, when you go into the course, you have a ton of resources right up at the top under Learning and Support Resources to continue your exploration of Reveal Math. So I'm going to stop there, Sherish, and let me know, are there any specific questions? Kindergarten level, you use it exactly the same way, but when you get into the resources, you're going to see they're scaffolded for kindergarten students. So they still have the be curious moment. They still have either the activity-based or the guided exploration. They still have the practice. They have everything that we looked at, but developed for kindergarten students. You know what, George, you're absolutely right. It's important to do the games in the classroom and the be curious moment and the hands-on and all of those kinds of things, okay, in order to develop that. So Sherish, if you want to come back on, or I can wrap it up if you'd like.
Thank you, DJ. I think we've covered all the questions. I was just skimming through, but you've not left any stone unturned. So thank you for that, DJ. Thank you for being so efficient in checking all of that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We do have our session in an hour now, actually, if you want to join for the back to school webinar. And we also have a couple of back to school webinar series in case you want to join for that. I can drop the link in the chat box. But thank you so much for joining us for the session today. And until next time, oh yes, you will get the recording of the session. That is right. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time then.